Hello and welcome to News9. Even as India celebrates its 77th Republic Day, it is also a day when the country and a newly independent country had adopted the Constitution. Today we have a very special guest, and he's written a book which is really getting fantastic reviews. Former Law Minister Dr. Ashwani Kumar, and this is the book. And what a relevant book this is on a day when India celebrates its Republic Day. It's called The Guardians of the Republic, and considering the man whom we are going to speak is, of course, like I said, a former minister, but he's a legal luminary. And I personally think he's a man with a philosophical bent of mind, and that really adds so much magic and value to what he says. Let's meet him right away. Dr. Ashwani Kumar, thank you so much for agreeing to speak with News9. You know, like the usual interviews, I want to start it differently. You are from Delhi, right? You went to St. Stephen's, you studied in JNU. What are your early memories of Republic Day? And I'm going to ask you a relevant question because my Delhi was also very different on 26th. But first, you, Apsa.
Well, my memories of Republic Day are very pleasant memories. Those were the good old days when the families used to go on the Republic Day to India Gate to watch the parade. We were not the privileged ones. We were the people who came from Lahore after partition, and although my father was an MLA and was a leading politician in Punjab, but I lived in Delhi under the guardianship of my grandparents. So we were not privileged to have special passes, and we would go and brave the winter winds and have a field day. It was a great privilege and pleasure to be participants at the Republic Day parade, and it was absolutely sacred for us, coming from a freedom fighters family, to observe the sanctity of this day.
Correct. You know, talking about myself, I mean, you echo exactly my feelings. It was a very sacred day. It wasn't taken to be a holiday at all. So you had to get up in the morning, and whether you had passes or not, you had to have that. It was very somber. It was very, the atmosphere, and also Dr. Ashwani Kumar, have you noticed that we may not have had the overt symbols of it, which I'm absolutely for it and recommend, you know, having the tricolor in your home, in your office, wearing those colors to work, etc. I didn't see that kind of a Delhi in my time, but there was a feeling that this is ours, this is who we are. Would you agree?
Yes, because every Indian at that time, particularly when we were growing up, and perhaps to some extent even today, they are participants, living participants in that feeling of nationalism that the Republic Day inspires. Right. And that will always remain, right, even in the subconsciousness of the people, that will remain. Although I must say that this is increasingly a non-deferential age. You defer to nothing, you respect nothing.
Okay, now coming to your book, you know, the introduction of this book is riveting. I mean, your earlier books also, this is, if we can call it for lack of any other word, is a sequel, if I may say. I want to ask you a few things today, even as, you know, the country celebrates Republic Day, is about how difficult was the task of framing the Constitution. Let's take the example, the best example that we know is Dr. Ambedkar. What I've heard is that apart from it's one of the longest constitution, its constitution is heavily borrowed from other constitutions. We also have borrowed from the American Constitution. Of course, you know, Dr. Ambedkar was apparently criticized for it. But amongst other things, how did they balance, which you keep talking about, you know, the kernel of Constitution, of Indian Constitution, is the balance between what are, you know, traditional values and modernity. Do you think that the makers of the framers had the same challenge, and how did you think they, you know, overcame that, Doctor?
That was a real challenge, and I think it must be credited to the ingenuity of not only Dr. Ambedkar. Of course, he was the principal architect in the writing of the Constitution, but to visionaries like Jawaharlal Nehru and all the other founding fathers who actually envisioned a just society, a dignitarian society, right, a libertarian society, because this was a country born to freedom. And this was a country which promised its citizens, above all, freedom. that would lend them dignity, and therefore the directive principles of state policy were borrowed from the Irish Constitution. The American Constitution gave us a lot of inspiration. So did the common law. The 1935 Government of India Act did provide the template, but of course, months and years of deliberations before the Constitution came into being was infused by profound thoughts that our founders brought to bear on the writing of the Constitution. But in one word, our Constitution was steeped in the values that inspired the freedom struggle.
Right. And also the challenge, if you could explain that, and also for the viewers, considering that, there are younger and younger viewers that News9, has almost every day. They're adding up to our kitty, which is good, is that this is a country which has many identities. I mean, I believe in it, that we are different Indias, but we are India, one India, different languages, different cultures, different way of life. So do you think that the Constitution remains the kernel of what brings us together, and also what gives us hope that we shall be dealt with, in the rightful manner, Dr. Ashwani Kumar?
Insofar as the Constitution encases the values of the Republic and our civilizational values, it is the most sacred binding instrument that binds our people together. But no document can keep a nation together. At the end of the day, it is the people who have to keep themselves together. So unity in diversity was always the underlying current of everything that our founders thought of and did. They were cognizant, as are we, of the diversity of the Indian nation, its plurality, different religions, different cultures, different languages. But all of them, as you rightly said, converged into a one feeling of nationhood at the end of the day. That is why from Kanyakumari to Kashmir, we have sung the song of freedom unitedly. And there was never any discordant note as far as India's freedom movement or India's nationalism was concerned. And regrettably, now some of the divisions are being accentuated for reasons all too well known.
Yes. Dr. Ashwani Kumar, I just want you to go back. You've really read the Constitution many times. You yourself are somebody who is a legal luminary. But apart from that, even as a student, as someone who's interested in it, there was criticism, not just from one section, but from different sections, apparently, that the Constitution, which was adopted on Republic Day, was rather Western, for lack of any other word, and did not have enough what is called Indian values and Indian systems, whatever that means. Would you, in retrospect, feel that we should have veered more towards what is called Indianness, or you think that it is just fine the way it is?
This criticism has been cropping up in recent times. I really don't know how this debate began. Democracy as a concept of governance in the modern world, because you talked about civilization and transition to modernity. At that point of time, the values of liberty, equality, and freedom, whether they came from the French Revolution or from the American War of Independence or from the struggle in Ireland or struggle against colonialism, essentially talked about liberty, equality, freedom. If we go back into our ancient texts also, when we talk of dharma, we talk of righteousness, we talk of law, when we talk of rights are defined differently in our ancient texts. I don't see the need for this controversy that we were inspired by the Western model, because that was at that particular point of time the most ideal model that was available.
Time tested, would you say?
Time tested in their countries, civilizationally. We can always improve upon models. It is nobody's case that any document, even the Constitution, is etched in stone. It is nobody's case. And we've had so many amendments to the Constitution.
Right.
Constitution is a living document. It lives through the lived experiences of the people.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah.
For whom it is meant.
Yes.
And that is why the basic structure doctrine was introduced. When we thought that power could be abused, the Supreme Court, through an interpretation, said that certain parts of the constitution are so basic that they are unamendable even by parliament. So this was a progressive advance in the evolution of our constitutional jurisprudence.
When I read your introduction, Dr. Ashwani Kumar, amongst everything else, why do I feel that there is a sense of, there is someone who constantly is talking to me, and that you being the author of this book, is that let's preserve this. We have to keep this. Is it slipping away from our hand? No. But then it's our duty. We are bounden to kind of, by duty, to uphold it. Is there, over the years, do you think that there have been times when you felt that we haven't been fair to the Constitution or just to the Constitution, I'm just playing on words, as we should have been, Doctor?
Well, there have been aberrations of the spirit of the
Right.
Constitution, and not only in one government. There have been instances of aberrations in the past as well. For example, when the ADM Jabalpur judgment came, no less a person than the former Chief Justice of India, who was a very learned man for whom I have the greatest respect, said that during emergency, even the right to life is suspended. Now, that was an extreme proposition to take. So therefore, in the light of that, now his son reversed that judgment after several years because it had received a lot of criticism. So somewhere, people who are charged with the duty to preserve the sanctity of the Constitution have not been found to be fair to the Constitution at all times. I'm not saying it is the norm. I'm not saying it is the pattern.
Exception, though.
But it has happened, and you have to guard against those exceptions. And I'll tell you where the test of constitutionalism is. The test of constitutionalism is, does the Constitution, all those who are charged with its custody, tame the exercise of power to the discipline of the Constitution? That's the test of constitutionalism. And why I talk about constitutionalism is because we gave unto ourselves constitutional democracy, not majoritarian democracy, which means that the transient majorities of the moment cannot indulge in transient impulses of the day in order to wreck the principles of the Constitution. Right. That is the challenge, and we have to be vigilant against power being abused. And I would end this part of my conversation with you by quoting, I think it was E.F.L. Wood, who said, "Power is apt to be insolent and liberty saucy, so that both are seldom on good terms, are seldom on good terms."
Right. But then in retrospect, when you look back, emergency, although the Constitution perhaps made a provision for it, but don't you think that we could have been more circumspect? Also you've been part of the Congress party for the longest time. You were the law minister. But if you look back, at the way Mrs. Gandhi decided to impose the emergency, I mean, it was everything was against what is called the fundamental rights of a human being who resides in this country, Dr. Ashwani Kumar.
Well, Congress has been criticized for that period. Congress has been criticized
What about
for
you, sir?
imposing emergency. I have not been a great believer in emergency. But having said that, Mrs. Gandhi was quintessentially a Democrat. Very few people know when she decided to lift the emergency, she was advised against lifting it. She was advised against holding the elections which defeated her.
But she was also a very astute politician.
She was but at that point of time, there were reports that the army and the police were being asked to revolt and things like that. And she thought that if she failed to take action at that time, maybe she would not be judged well by history. Maybe, I don't know, I can't enter into her mental processes, but I remember as a law student, I met her on one or two occasions with a group of other people. And I remember she asked me, what do people think about us? And I told her, I said, "Madam, during the emergency, the public opinion has turned against the Congress, particularly of the intelligentsia." And she said, "The intelligentsia doesn't even go to vote."
Right. Which is pretty much what Mr. Modi also says when he talks about Lachin's Delhi. Anyway, I mean, two great leaders, and I'll talk about the book now, where you talk about, judicial review. This is very important. A lot of people want to know. You say that the court's power of judicial review is validated essentially on the premise that democracy is not merely the rule of the majority, but then many reject it, saying it subserves the rule of law, that it is anti-democratic. Weigh in on this, Dr. Ashwani Kumar. I mean, how does a lay person look at judicial review at all?
Well, I think over the years, the Indian public has come to have regard for the Supreme Court in terms of the power of judicial review, because when people fail to get justice anywhere else, they knock at the door of the Supreme Court. And Supreme Court has over the years earned a degree of moral and intellectual integrity, and therefore they have acceptance amongst the people at large. Some missteps in recent times notwithstanding. In fact, from A.K. Gopalan to ADM Jabalpur, there have been several missteps, and these have been pointed out by no less a person than Justice Chalameshwar in his dissenting judgment in the Anjay case. And he made a very, very good point. And I am in agreement with the dissenting judgment of Justice Chalameshwar in the judge's appointment case. The Anjay is the judge's appointment case, as you know. And he said, what is the guarantee that the judges will take the right decisions where politicians have failed? And then he cited all these examples of judicial missteps. So, and I would like to say one thing, which is critical, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, this view was articulated by a noted constitutional scholar in the United States, Carl Levin. He said the prestige of the court, he was talking about the US Supreme Court, but that applies to our court as well. The prestige of the court depends not on what the judges say, but what they do with what they say. My problem with our Supreme Court is they say all the right things, but they are unable to enforce their own edicts.
So they can't walk the talk.
They can't walk the talk. Yes. And therefore it just goes by the wayside, and people are now beginning to wonder, why is it that they say all the right things, but their judgments go here and there, and even when they decide absolutely correctly according to the felt sensitivities of the people in tune with the Constitution, they fail to implement it.
Right. Talking about missteps, I would like you to weigh in on recent cases, the very recent being how the governors of Tamil Nadu, of Kerala and Karnataka did not agree with the speech which was presented to them by the state cabinet. And in Kerala's case, there was accusation against Mr. Arlekar that he had altered certain words. In Tamil Nadu, of course, the governor walked off, R.N. Ravi, which is now the third or the fourth time. And in Karnataka, once again, there was a massive showdown, and how, so what has this country, we have seen since yesterday on our channel has also debated it, but newspapers also, that there has always been, this is not the first time, but don't you think these slugfests have become more and more aggressive, in the recent past?
They have become more and more aggressive. In fact, these slugfests are most unfortunate. They are a frontal assault on the first principles of democracy. Governors have no reason to interfere with the addresses prepared by these elected representatives of the people, and they have no purpose to be in constant conflict with the chief minister. Of course, they have a right to differ with the chief minister, and the Constitution provides a mechanism for them to refer back the bills to the chief minister or to the government and take a second view about it. And that is the principle on which the central government also functions. The president and the governors are supposed to act on the aid and advice of the elected representatives of the people, headed by the chief minister or the prime minister. When they don't do that, they upset the delicate constitutional balance, and that balance is inbuilt into the functioning of a constitutional democracy.
What about Umar Khalid and Churchill? This has been debated, and we heard you even earlier about saying that this is, would you concede that this is also a misstep, Dr. Ashwani Kumar?
Indeed, it is a misstep. It is a misstep, and I say about this judgment because the judgment is very well written. Its English is very, very good, and I say this is a classic case of felicity trying to hide flawed reasoning. And to allow two citizens of this country before the beginning of the trial itself, leave aside before conviction, to languish in jail for more than 5 years is a shame. Is a shame.
Your book also talks about we live in the era of where gossip is gospel. And you also talk about the National Herald case which is involving allegedly the Gandhis. I want to ask you that, and you of course elaborate on how everyone, the opposition particularly, and lots of other institutions run away with canards, and they really don't wait for something to come to fruition, and they jump to conclusions about so and so is guilty and so has to be taken to jail or whatever. How do you deal with it? I mean, if there is a National Herald case and if it is there in public domain, and how does an opposition behave then, if not go and speak to the people that, hey, there is a case and this is what has happened? And why do you think this era of which is being perpetuated where gossip is indeed gospel, Dr. Ashwani Kumar?
See, it is well known that scandal makes news. It is well known, I think it was Jonathan Swift who said, that falsehood flies and truth comes limping thereafter. What happens is, political parties are entitled to make accusations against their political opponents. But when a matter is sub judice, when it is going through the legal due process, please wait for the outcome before you pronounce the accused guilty. An allegation cannot take the place of proof. What is happening is that allegations are taken as evidence to prejudge the innocence or otherwise of the person.
Right.
So I'm not speaking only in terms of the National Herald case or in terms of the
Justice
cases
Verma,
against political opponents. I'm saying generally, trial by media offends the rule of law. And rule of law is a part of the unalterable basic structure of the Constitution. Therefore, trial by media offends the basic structure of the Constitution. And the tragedy is that it is happening every day under the nose of the Supreme Court.
We need some hope, considering that this book, of course, talks about hope. I'm not saying it actually forewarns, asks us to be more cautious. But going forward, how do you look at it? Because I mean, I don't want to generalize, but overall, if you look around you today, I mean, it's more about majoritarian rule everywhere. And that's according to your book, you say that that's one of the major hurdles or impediments for a constitution to not just be taken seriously, to be applied when needed. Looking forward, how do you look at it?
That is the first answer I gave. The challenge before the nation is how to tame majoritarian impulses to the sacrosanct values of the Constitution. Because it is well known that the Constitution is not made for a day or for an election. Right. It is made for generations to come. You cannot, under the pressure of the transient impulses, allow a particular set of majoritarian people to run roughshod or what should I say, trample the Constitution.
But then people, you mean a government, or a government which is majoritarian?
It is naturally the majoritarian will is reflected in the government's actions.
But then it's we the people who choose the government.
Yes, and that is the perennial question in constitutional philosophy. You can't take majoritarianism, you can't take the majority will out of any definition of democracy. I concede that. That has to be there.
Yes.
It is flawed to say that the majority will has no value. Of course it has value. But we gave unto ourselves a constitutional democracy, and the provisions of the Constitution are sacrosanct. Those provisions were incorporated into the Constitution in order to tame the exercise of power, so that the exercise of power is benign, it is purposive, and it is there to advance the ends of the Constitution, not to subvert the ends of the Constitution. So that is why in my book I have finally concluded that egregious infractions of the Constitution can eventually only be addressed in the people's court, not in a constitutional court. It cannot be addressed by the brethren in the black robe, howsoever well-intentioned they may be, because they are a part of the same social milieu, the same environment.
Right.
They cannot, and I think it's a great injustice to the judges to expect that the defining political issues of the day would be solved in the courts. And please don't forget, which fact is lost in these debates. Judiciary is the third organ of the state. Judiciary is a part of the Indian state. It is not above the executive or above the legislature.
Right.
It has been given a predefined role, and in fact, one of the principal criticisms of the court is, and to some extent justified as well, that the court is entering into every single issue of the day.
Right.
And somebody had said that they had time to constitute a bench to deal with the dogs case when hundreds of people are languishing in jail without trial, when people are being tortured in custody. But where is the priority of the Supreme Court? This is a question that has been asked by leading lawyers. And this is a question the court cannot escape. So therefore, it is at the end of the day for the institutions of libertarian democracy to preserve their own integrity, intellectual, moral, and professional. Only that will ensure for it the willing allegiance of the people. No written word of any document can win you the allegiance of the people. It is how you live up to your duties that will earn for you the willing allegiance of the people.
On that note, Dr. Ashwani Kumar, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank
it was
you
a pleasure.